Yes. Welcome back to the Bees Like That podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris. Man, I've been gone for a minute. It has been a busy month. What I've been up to. So, I've started this new job, I don't know, about 6 months ago. And part of that job allows me to travel different places in the country and go to different conferences and be in community with other professionals who are either like attorneys or service workers like myself, or otherwise function within the child welfare system. So it's pretty cool, and I've had a blast. I've not traveled that much within such a short time span. I'm usually more of a homebody, but I had a great time. Met a lot of really fascinating people. Got to be in community with a lot of really great and powerful people. I was able to present at one of these conferences, so that was super rewarding and super fun. Also a little nerve-wracking, which is kind of funny because if you remember an episode or two ago, I shared with y'all that I'd been dusting off my speech writing chops as I've, in my younger years, given a few speeches. I would think that one might think that being I had that historical experience with giving speeches and writing speeches, that something like this would not make me nervous. However, I was terribly nervous, and I think that I may have a lawsuit for false advertising for Degree deodorant because it let me down. Jokes. Anyway, it was great, man, and I appreciate the opportunity and time spent. And I've been meaning to jump in and record another pod, and I've had a lot of different ideas. I've just been busy and truthfully not felt myself lately. I've been kind of dealing with some inner ear stuff that's really just had me distracted and not feeling too hot. So hanging in there, still forever grateful. Life today is a tremendous improvement from what it was 6 years ago. However, taking things as they come, dealing with them, trying to be grateful and remain focused, but it's been a challenge. Anyway, one of the bigger takeaways that I got from the conference and conferences and being in community with all these great people, and also having a chance to an opportunity to use my voice and speak to issues that are important to me, specifically with the work that I do and the function that I perform, capacities in which I perform. It was great, and that message is being elevated, and of course it's never about me, it's always about the message, so that feels really good. However, looking back and just kind of bringing everything full circle and wrapping it up nicely, or as nicely as possible, one of the bigger takeaways, and this is something that I talk about a lot, but I'm going to give you a little bit of that today. Here it goes a little something like this. God will reveal to you or whoever, when we're willing, his gifts for us and guide you toward your purpose. And it is our job as best as we can, and we should do our best anyway, to root our minds in fertile soil, rich in gratitude, steadfastness, poise, class, discipline, self-determination, all the stuff, right? The stuff that just comes together, no matter the specific balance ratio for each individual, but it comes together as best as it can and works well in your life, right? Prepares you. And it is in this way that we are prepared and need only but step to or forward into when it is placed upon our hearts to move, right? Opportunities or chances to be of service to community or whatever. And the goal in my mind, I think about this so much, and I feel so grateful that I know this. And, one of the people who reminded me of this, well, actually really made this message really hit home for me was DMX. How just deeply pious and like religious he was, and how unafraid and unapologetic that he was, no matter where he was along his journey with addiction, his kids, like whatever his struggles were, he always knew that all he had to do was show up to God however he was. It was beautiful. And he was completely unashamed to let the world know about that relationship, what his struggles were. He knew he didn't have to be perfect, and God would still love him anyway. That, I think, was a beautiful thing. So what comes to mind for me is, how can I be the best, the most fruitful servant that I can be? And be sure of my position as a servant. Because I think a lot of people get this mixed up. And that it's not just a thing to do with my personal religious beliefs, right? Or my relationship with God. But I think as people who believe in God or have a relationship with God, it's important for us to evaluate how we position ourselves to God or close to God, right? So being very careful not to align ourselves equally with God. That's a bit dangerous because we aren't gods. I know that there's a whole thing about, God body and all this stuff, and people think that they're God and or versions of God. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around that stuff, but it's important for me in my daily life, and this is how it impacts me, is to be sure and remind myself as my position as a servant and not as a person or thing or someone who is equal to God or even worthy of God, right? Not just for a servant for God, but a servant for my family, my community, and the mission, right? The mission, whatever it might be. It could be service in the child welfare system. It could be racial equity and equality in space, in community. It could be social justice. It could be whatever the mission is. Always remembering and reminding myself that A, ain't no one person bigger than the program, and B, I am but a humble servant. That is my role. And one thing that helps me retain this perspective is to remember that I too have been delivered from my own personal hell, my own version of desperation, and positioned for a calling. You know what I'm saying? I've been built a specific way, and given specific gifts and skills, talents, if you will. And I can't say that these are things that are brought on by myself, right? Like, these aren't things that I just woke up one day and be like, hey, I think I'll be good at this. It's not what happened. But anyway, let me ask you this question. How prepared are you to be trained? You might be like, what the hell is Chris talking about? Trained for what? Like, I go through trainings all the time at work. That's not what I'm talking about. This came up during the panel that I was on at the last conference that we went to. And it can be easy. And I deal with bits of this myself, right? Like, I think it's human nature, especially for people, anyone, right? Like to ascend from or to a position of power or authority, or be in a position of power and authority, that dynamic, especially when you're in client-facing services like I am, meeting people at like ground zero, when they're first getting clean or when they're unsheltered or whatever. And I don't know that it's intentional, but it can happen that we think that we know best, right? Because we're the professionals. We are the service provider. We're the person who's been trained to work with you. We're the one who's been trained to fix your life, right? It's a huge mistake, but it happens, and I see people, and I've fallen into this trap myself. Obviously, there's no overt intention to create harm for a person or to ill-advise anyone to do things that would be unsafe. But this stuff, it does happen. At any rate, recognizing, and this is something that let me back up. This is something that I say a lot, right? Goodness from any source. Now, that can sound just like a cliche catchphrase. And I may wear it out. You get tired of hearing Chris say it. Cool. but it has a deeper meaning, right? What this deeper meaning is that if you remain open, just like from the mouth of babes comes the truth, you can receive wisdom and guidance and truth from anyone. Anyone, no matter how downtrodden they may seem, how desperate they might be, how ignorant they may seem to you, how diametrically opposed your positions and opinions on politics or any of the other stuff might be. It doesn't matter. Goodness from any source. So, as a professional and someone who works with people who are impacted by substance use disorders, being unsheltered, being impacted by the child welfare system, etc., I have to stay in a place to be open and willing to be guided by people when they're voicing their needs, right? Because how easy it is to unintentionally step over the best interests of people while we are presuming to know what's in their minds, what's on their hearts, and especially if we've had similar experiences to them. I think sometimes this is a mistake. A lot of times this is a mistake. And it is wise, I think, to slow down and listen. Because I've said this many times. How best a way, or what better way to know or learn the needs of the community or a community that you serve, and they will tell you if you pay attention, than to tap into the voice, the heartbeat, and the rhythm of that community. And that doesn't have to mean that you seek out and are able to find one single person who is the voice and champion for this community. No, it can be someone who is just a voice from that community, or a few voices from that community. Paying attention, you will be able to determine what they're saying to you if you're willing to be guided. Because be sure, these are still grown-ups that you're dealing with. There's still people and human beings. So, trained, guided, molded, that is precisely what will be, what you will be. That's what's going to happen. And starting today and for every day afterward for the rest of your lives, if you're willing to pay attention. Now, that's not just with your job, that's with life in general. One of the harder battles that I face in my life, not just in my work, but professionally, is Sorry, I'm trying to be thoughtful of how I want to word this. One of the things that I deal with and I speak about openly and freely is racial equality and equity in space. These are important issues to me. Obviously, being a person of color, a black man specifically, they're going to be important to me. I don't expect them to be of the same level of importance to every person who looks like me or who is me. It would be nice. Maybe we would make some more progress, but nevertheless, that's not the case. Something that I want to make abundantly clear to anyone, in case something is like confusing or you're having a hard time wrapping your head around this. This is not a me versus an individual or an individual agency or a group of people. This is not an issue about me or them. It cannot be, I've said this before, it cannot be a personal issue about me and another person. When that happens, you set aside and are acting independently and upon your own wishes and agendas of any mission that you had about community, equality, etc. Once you make it personal, this is a big mistake, and this is something that if you have an inherent habit or a proclivity to, like if you get defensive really easy and you want to make it about you and another person or an agency, Just like takers recognize givers. Otherwise, nefarious individuals will recognize these traits in you and they will exploit them. So I would encourage you that if this is something that you struggle with, work on it, get better about it, get better at it. Because at the end of the day, what is the ultimate goal in my mind, and I hope that it is in anyone else's mind, and that is simply to determine life, happiness, peace, liberty, freedom, love, success, all of the stuff on our own, right? Or together, whatever, it doesn't matter. Without the fear of death, management, increased and unreasonable supervision in policing, mass incarceration, all the stuff, right? I wish my dad was here because I didn't really get a chance to have any of these kind of talks with him. But if he were, I know what he would say. He would agree with probably some of what I said, not know what the hell I was talking about with a bunch of it. But ultimately, his response to me would be, God gonna work it all out. I used to get so frustrated with him when he would say that to me. But now looking back, what I understand what he meant was, that one, well, I can't presume to know what he meant, but I think what he meant or what he may have been doing was that was him offering it up. Like, look, man, I'm not about to try and like untangle all this stuff. I've got limited time left on this planet, and I want to spend it as happily as possible. So I'm going to give all this stuff to someone who I know can handle it, and in their time, they're going to work it out, deliver me from what they think I need to be delivered from, and let me kick it in the rest. It's just how it's going to go. Oh, man. Yeah. Life is a funny thing. At any rate, if you didn't do it on the way in, please think about doing it on the way out. Hit that like, subscribe, and post notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the cool, wacky, fun, zany, badass tomfoolery stuff we talk about here on the Bees Like That podcast. Peace, y'all.